Welcome to our inaugural Figure It Out podcast. We
Woo.
are here to talk to you about all kinds of issues in education. My name is Jen,
I'm Francois.
My name is Sanjay.
and we're here to chat with you today. So, like I said before, all kinds of issues in higher ed and teaching. And Frankie, you were saying something a minute ago about the great intersection between the two.
Yeah, we were just talking about, what this is. And yeah, we're just kind of talking about that that overlap that occurs with higher education, but also the domain of regular education. And kind of interested in probing some of those topics.
Perhaps we should think about or have a chat about, well, what topics can we explore in this format?
Mm, yeah. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's a good question. I mean, it's funny. We were just thinking even first thing because we're so immersed in the graduate student world in the higher ed domain. I feel like the first things that come to my mind are some of the things that we've already spoken about extensively. But the graduate student experience and getting ready for graduate studies.
So
So,
maybe do you want to talk about your backgrounds in education and sort of what brought you to your various levels of experience for our wonderful multitudinous listeners out there. Um, we've got two PhDs and a soon-to-be PhD in the or a PhD students and one soon-to-be PhD student in the lineup today.
Yeah, I mean that's a great place to start. Sandy, you want to kick it off?
yeah, so I've spent all my teaching career in international schools in Asia, and after a couple of decades in that role, I thought I needed to do something different and embarked on graduate studies, master's courses in Australia, and now the PhD here in Canada.
Nice.
My research interest areas are around international baccalaureate education, international education, and that world.
Excellent. Excellent. I mean, it's a big world to navigate. Yeah. Yeah, I'll jump into. So yeah, my name's Frankie. I'm a second year PhD student at Queen's. And I study French as a second language in Canada. I guess it can happen anywhere else in the world, but I'm studying it specifically in Canada. I taught for 3 years as a French immersion teacher in Sarnia, Ontario, the bastion of French learning of Canada. And now I kind of just moved towards the graduate studies because I wanted to solve some of those issues that are going on regarding, teacher shortages and so yeah, I do FSL stuff and I do a little bit of research with, program evaluation and community engaged scholarship and some knowledge mobilization as well. So, kind of my hands in every little or a whole bunch of little bags.
I'm Jen. I have my master's in education. And then I'm currently actually pursuing a master's degree in library and information science because, who doesn't need extra degrees? And then I'm going to the PhD program next year. And I also, like Sanjay, worked internationally for about 8 years, in China and Korea. And then I came back here and my master's was in educational leadership, but my PhD is going to be in community engaged evaluation. And basically, that transition kind of just took place over realizing, like Frankie and Sanjay, that there are areas for improvement in the field of education and how we can really make sure that the people who are being affected by it are involved in the process of making those changes and of, evaluating and looking for areas for improvement. So I'm really excited to participate in that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, starting next year.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting thing is when you jump into the graduate studies and please throw in if you feel that you don't see it the same way. But I found that graduate studies was it was an interesting thing to go in. I was like, yeah, I'm really excited to read a lot more and understand the theory more. And but I found that there's so much like project management involved in just managing your graduate studies. As Jen said, there's like funding applications, and then there's course application, and then there's internships, and then there's all kinds of other stuff that you got to kind of look at too.
That as well as keeping to timelines with deadlines for coursework or keeping deadlines with
Yeah.
submitting um, various documents and drafts of work to supervisors. Yes, so all that project management. Yes, I think we should possibly have a course in the graduate program about project management.
I definitely agree. I definitely think there's a ton of project management that goes into your graduate studies. And it's just, yeah, there's so much more. What do I want to say? I find the transition from like a 9 to 5 job or a teaching job into grad studies is such a huge jump, just because of the amount of time you have and the amount of independent work you're expected to do, which is all well and good, but you really have to figure it out amongst the other responsibilities in your life and how quickly, like, teaching assistantships, research assistantships, jobs, um, kids, groceries, life can all get in the way. And then all of a sudden you're 3 years into a 4-year degree and you've
Yes.
barely progressed as far as you want to progress.
It was like, how did I get up here? Still where I was at.
And all these things, of course, as we know, change from week to week. The commitments that you listed there, Jen. One week you can have those, and the next week it could be completely something else, right?
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because it's a lot of the skills that I find that in education at least a lot of the skills that you have as a teacher when you transfer to the graduate program or if you're taking it on the side or whatever I find that they're very transferable, but it's like a different intensity and I find that you're spinning all these kind of different plates that you can definitely use their skills as a teacher. So your lesson planning and your organization and your tracking is just so essential to it. But again, bringing that kind of what we were talking about earlier, that overlap of both, higher ed and education, I think they really do share a lot in common.
I find that this transition from teaching in classrooms in K to 12 classrooms and into the then the graduate student space, you're right, there are a lot of skills transferable across, but through my experience of working in K to 12, it was a very collaborative environment. So you could um, rely on colleagues around you to help support you. Whereas this experience with the graduate studies is as you said, Frankie, far more independent.
And which is kind of it's tough because as a teacher, I find that you have that independence. And please, if your experience is different, that's correct me or add your perspective as well. But you have that independence, but you still feel like you're kind of confined by all these kind of other rules as well. And not maybe not confined, that's not the best word, but you work within the system. Whereas the graduate students, your studies at least, is a little bit more free and open into interpretation. Your experience can really be a little bit more malleable than the teaching experience.
Absolutely. I was just thinking what you said kind of resonated just in the sense of like you're as a teacher, you're constantly surrounded by people, but
Yes.
often professionally you're isolated. You might be the only one in your school teaching, English or art or, French. Um, but you have 30 little people between the ages of, 3 and 17, depending on what grade you teach, um, collaborating with you every day in your co-constructed community. Um, but at the same time, all your planning, all your professional assessment, and all that stuff tends to happen alone. Whereas in education, like there's such an open community of people who are doing the same thing as you want to
Yeah.
actively collaborate with, but you spend so much of your time alone, right? Like at your desk or in an office doing the research and doing the work that despite the increased opportunities for collaboration and the increased opportunities for knowledge sharing, you don't often have the time, the space, or occasionally the inclination to do it, which is always it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think as outside of this space, our efforts to have a regular meetup weekly has certainly helped me through the journey. The coffees have also helped. Um,
Anything can be
Yeah.
tackled with caffeine.
Yeah. As I say,
absolutely.
the caffeination just fuels the effort. There's just so much further. I was gonna say this leads us to today's sponsor, which is coffee. Have a conversation at a time and a half faster than you normally do about world problems.
Absolutely. Generic coffee brand, if you would like to sponsor this podcast, we are open
Yeah.
to sponsorship
It's
deals.
caffeine. Uh,
Now, thinking about sort of the future, what are the kind of things we have on our agenda list are things like why you might want to apply for grad school, what kind of experiences you have for grad school. And I think maybe today, before we sort of wrap up for the day, we might want to think about like what are some of the initial like what was the initial impetus for applying, and then sort of moving on to like what are some of the systems in tertiary education, and in that case we're going to get some people in who are at different institutions, and I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but we're in Canada, so everything we talk about is specific to the Canadian context. It's the wonderful thing about international podcasts, right? You could be anywhere in the world.
Course, yeah. I mean, really good ideas. So, I guess what we're kind of looking at now is, I mean, we're kind of coming, we're trying to keep these things a little bit short right now. But what we're looking at now is just moving forward, and maybe we tackle those higher ed pieces first and talk about those systemic pieces, getting into the program, getting acclimated, and then. Yeah, like Jen said, we're trying to pull in some content experts from both of our faculty, within the work that we do, but also beyond as well. And it would be brilliant to have those international scholars kind of weigh in as well.
And
Yeah.
looking around as well. And when we talk about grad school, we've also got to consider that people attend professional master's programs
Mm,
as well as the research focused master's programs, and with the same with the doctorate level. So your professional doctorates or your as opposed to your research doctorates. So yes, grad school encompasses the whole lot, doesn't it? Yep. So as an example, my journey started out with a course-based master's, where there was a significant capstone component, the research component to it, and that just fueled the interest to go on to do a pure research master's, which then again snowballed into to the inspiration to do a PhD. So I've come through that sort of a path.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to take away the trend that's going on right now too. So I'll talk about my path real quick. But I was teaching and I noticed some problems in the field that I was teaching in, and I decided I would go and study and try and find some methods to tackle it. So I really did plan to do a research-based master's. Um, and yeah, kind of like what Jen was saying, I was a little con I was a little curious, like actually about the project versus the thesis. I wanted to engage in research, but I didn't realize that a project also can get engaged in research. Anyway, so definitely there's like the pathways are you can definitely navigate them and they have a whole bunch of flexibility. But yeah, so once I did the master's, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed working with teachers in that capacity and working with the colleagues and the learning experiences. And then I pursued the PhD, and so now I'm going the full way, right? I stayed research because I really enjoy that process of identifying a question, finding it, trying a solution, and then trying to find out some insights that can inform the process for another cycle or a different cycle or yeah.
My approach personally was a lot more pragmatic. You both have such wonderful motivations for going to the masters. I kind of fell into a leadership role at a school I was working at, and usually, in order to be a vice principal or principal at a school, you have to have a master's degree or a PhD, and I didn't have one at the time, and so I said, oh, if I want to continue down this path of leadership, I should go get my master's degree, and so that was my sort of selfish intention when I first applied. And then a little bit like Frankie, I kind of just fell in love with the research and fell in love with the work that everyone was doing at the faculty and really realized that like there's so much more potential there. And I always planned to do something practical and that I was hoping to be helpful to the community, but like I didn't realize um, how practical research could be until I got to the faculty and started working with people.
And like to your point, Jen, I just want to add that piece because I'm seeing the connection that you and I both had with that research piece, but you also never really know what kind of research you're going to kind of engage in. And so you might come at it with your own problem or your own field that you really want to be interested in, but you might accidentally fall into another field of research that you really love, which for myself, I could speak to, program evaluation or community engaged evaluation. I really, really enjoyed that work. But that's not at all why I came to grad school. I didn't even know that was an option.
I think that's the story with a lot of people as well. Just reflecting on mine, the project that I came into the PhD with is not the project I'm working on right now. And this project that I'm working on right now is far more interesting, I believe. There are lots of opportunities, I think, in grad school to expand your thinking, expand your and like I say, what you come in with is not what you end up with necessarily.
And the inverse of that, what you put in is what you get out.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going in for a master's like I did initially, that you just, hey, this is a qualification I need for
Mhm.
my personal or professional ambition, that's fine. And
Yeah.
you can do just in that case, I'd recommend course-based masters. By the way, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. You don't need to
Yeah.
do a thesis if all you want is to get the
Yeah.
qualification.
Hire it out
But
part-time. Yeah.
yeah, and that's another great option is that you could do it part-time while you're working. A lot of schools will pay uh, certain courses. They may not pay the whole thing, but they'll pay for courses, especially if you're at a private school. But even public schools has professional development funding. Yeah, but I think it's
Absolutely.
important to note that, yeah, your motivation for going into a grad studies doesn't really matter in terms of like there's no right or wrong reason to go. Obviously you need to balance things like your ability to fund your education and the time you can commit to your education, because I was told by everyone under the sun that a master's in education was quote unquote easy, and that it was, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be able to work full time and still go to school full time. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there are
Yeah.
programs like that.
Oh,
The program that we are currently in is not one of
Haven't
them.
found it yet.
not like that.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure there are people that put in the minimum that, they skim the readings instead of doing them, and they lean on their personal experience, which again, nothing wrong with that. But if you're not immersing yourself in the process, you're not going to get as much out of it as if you really commit to it. And whether you're committing
Yeah.
part-time or full-time, right? If you're still working full-time, absolutely. There are some great evening classes you can take, some great online, synchronous and asynchronous classes you can do. By the way, synchronous means, live, and asynchronous means not live.
All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good first session and to kind of just set the tone, set the agenda, but yeah, just kind of give a glimpse of what it is that we're trying to do or talk about or achieve with this podcast, right? This type of connection.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Maybe we should rename it to Caffeine and Tangents because
Yeah, there it is.
that's what you can look forward to.
Yeah. That could be a section, caffeine and
Yes.
tangents. Yeah,
Ooh,
everybody
that
has
would
a
be
shot of
great. That would be
espresso, and
Oh,
then you go on your 2-minute tangent, 3-minute thesis style, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time as we work together to try to figure Ed out.